both sides.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean it should have saved because I think the stream got cut
Oh no,
out.
no, I recorded on the back end. So
Oh,
even if you
perfect.
lost it, I have a backup recording that I use. I worry about your internet, so I use a
Yeah.
backup recording
No,
on
that's
yours.
that's very smart. All right, man. Well, just take it away then.
All right. And it wouldn't be a pop culture cosmos without my good friend. He is our own jolly elf of pop culture cosmos. You gotta check out what he's doing today at popculturecosmos.com. His awesome shows, Topicocalypse and the Super BS Gamescast, plus his amazing book, which if you don't get it in time to get sent out to your favorite person as a gift, congratulations, you suck. You can actually get it still in a digital format to make sure it gets there in the Christmas deadline at Amazon and Barnes& and Noble. It is my good friend. It is Josh Peterson. What's up, man?
What is up? So I've actually been debating this with people all week. Do you think there's ever going to be another classic Christmas movie, like one that you walk into Target or Walmart and see like on the Christmas display with like Miracle on 34th Street and the Santa Claus and Christmas Story? Do you think we're
And
ever
Die
going to
Hard.
get that? Die Hard. Do you think we're ever going to get that, or do you think that like these cheap cable TV Christmas movies have just oversaturated the holiday movie
Well,
marketplace?
Hallmark has become had obviously everybody knows what they do in the card business, the greeting card business, but they lent their name to this network, the Hallmark Network, and all these movies that they now do, especially relating to the Christmas holiday season, has become a billion-dollar
Well,
industry for them. And
yeah.
but hold on, I'm just
Okay.
saying it's in regards in answer to your question. I agree with you. That has put out a glut of so many Christmas movies, mediocre or ones that people just enjoy that really just are not going to be memorable to 3, 4, 5 years down the line.
Hmm.
I agree with you. The same thing I want to ask you is, in regards to a Christmas song. When is the next Christmas song that's going to be memorable? Like Mariah
Right.
Carey's. After that one, there's really nothing. Wham made one in the 80s. Mariah Carey made one in the 90s. After that, there's been almost a 100 attempts by modern artists to either go ahead and recreate that kind of song with their own original stuff, and still nothing has just latched on as that next great Christmas hit. So I agree with you, my friend, on both a TV and a music front that we probably may not have another film or song that's going to resonate. I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping you're wrong, but there's a good chance there may not be another song or movie down the line that's going to resonate like the old classics has.
Yeah, and I think in addition to that, like culture's changed a lot too, and like I guess like I got a little irritated the other night because on Saturday Night Live they were saying that like, hey, even though you're supposed to be good to your fellow person on Christmas, don't forget that they might be a racist like person, and so I'm thinking like looking at that, like people don't get warm fuzzies from Christmas anymore, it's like it's no longer the time when people are just like good to each other, or the just pure goodness of their hearts, and that's what a lot of those old Christmas movies was about. It's just we as a society are so locked up in conflict, and it makes me so sad because Christmas is so great, man.
Well, we will try to spread the good and positive Christmas spirit right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. We got a lot of spirit to go ahead and dish out to you on today's program because we are going into spoiler territory, going ahead and diving deep into it. We're going to talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. It is a monstrous hit, even beyond what I was expecting, what anyone was expecting. How much did it earn in its first weekend? Historic numbers. And we will tell you what they are coming up here on the show. Plus, we will have our reviews and full thoughts on it as far as any spoilers that are going on. We will go ahead and try and dish out the best we can on it as we review Spider-Man No Way Home on today's show. Plus, also as well, I want to make sure everybody gets out there the word on Yellowstone and 1883, the spiritual prequel to that major hit series. We're going to talk briefly about what kind of just basically just what kind of good vibes are coming from Yellowstone, how big a hit how big a hit is it, and also as well how 1883 succeeds on that Yellowstone platform. We're going to tell you about how this has been such a big boon for Paramount coming up on the show as well. Plus, also, we're going to be talking about Power On, the story of Xbox. If you are an Xbox fan, I will tell you why. You need to go ahead and sit down and catch the documentary of Xbox coming up on the show. Plus, also, Lord of the Rings reaches 20. All right, one ring to rule them all. That's right, for 20 years, Lord of the Rings has been around as a great movie set, and the original Fellowship of the Ring hits 20 this week. We will talk about the impact the Lord of the Rings has in the 20 years, plus also Josh's best and worst of pop culture. He's going to talk about what he liked and what he didn't like in the year of 2021. That's coming up on the back end of the show. Plus, we preview a heavy week coming up. Very important out there. We're going to talk about how big a week and all the great stuff that's coming to you this Christmas coming up on the back end of the show as well. But first, my friend, it is Spider-Man No Way Home. I think what was the projections? I think from what I was seeing leading into the weekend, $150 million US, about 275, $300 million worldwide was the actual, I think, projections. I think most were analyzing. And this, you know what? I will say this: they weren't even close. I had said to Jeff Sloboda last week on the MCU's Bleeding Edge, I think that this would be the first $1 billion movie of the pandemic. And I think I'm going to be right on that one because, yes, with all respect to the battle at Lake Changjing, which has just garnered over $900 million worldwide, basically and essentially at China in the box office, the movie Spider-Man No Way Home did absolutely insane numbers, especially in the middle of a pandemic, especially with things starting to close down and shut down and lock back up again, which I'm hoping that's not going to be the case, but it's looking more and more in that direction. People were just out there, maybe because they thought things were going to look bleak as far as going back to the box office here in 2-3 weeks with what's going on with the pandemic. They went out in big numbers. Not only did it garner over a $50 million Thursday, it garnered over a $100 million Friday, on its way to a $253 million domestic U.S. opening and a $587 million worldwide take. Just absolutely insane, my friend. Absolutely insane. When you hear those numbers before we even get into the movie itself, what does that tell you, my friend?
I mean, I'd say it's a hit. I'd say people were willing to go out. And so we went and saw it today, and this was the first time that I've been in a movie theater post-pandemic where we have had people literally sitting right next to us because the theater was so packed out. So this is
Yeah.
definitely something that people are willing to risk whatever's out there to go and see this movie in theaters. And I think that it was a smart move by Disney to say like, hey, this is not going to be popping onto Disney Plus on,
No, Sony.
day Sony. Oh, well, yeah. Whoever said, this is not going to be something you can stream from your couch. This is something you're going to have to go to the movies to watch. And I don't know. I mean, you look at it, it definitely pays off. But I mean, just knowing the content within the film, you can see why people are going to see this movie.
Absolutely. Just amazing numbers. $587 million worldwide, over $250 million here at the US box office. In fact, in its first 4 days alone, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it has already earned more domestically than anything in 2021 that was released. It beat already Shang Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings in its first 4 days. And that's just outstanding and amazing. You cannot provide enough superlatives on that. But getting into the movie itself, I want to go ahead and say I will have an update on my Marvel Cinematic Universe article that I constantly update with each and every movie in the Pop Culture Cosmos. Now, I'm glad now that I don't have to add the Venom movies on it, and I will just go and start off with that because we are going into spoiler town. So if you haven't watched Spider-Man No Way Home, you probably want to turn it off for a few minutes or change the channel or check out one of our previous shows. That's even better if you want to go ahead and do that for the next few minutes because we're going to go heavy into spoilers. I am so glad, first off, that I don't have to add the Venom movies to my MCU list because of what happened as far as the end credit is concerned in
Well,
regards to Venom.
let's talk about that for a second. Kevin
Well,
Feige did say that they were going to meet up in some form in an interview last week. So you might have to go back and add those movies. We don't
Well,
know.
when that happens, I will. I mean, there is a Venom that was left behind, a little piece of Venom, but Tom Hardy and the main Venom are going back into the Spider Verse end of the Spider Verse and not in the MCU universe. They were there for a brief day, but they now end up back on the Sony side of things. Let's just put it that way for now. That obviously, like you said, that could change. It probably will change, but I'm just thankful that it has. But getting into the movie itself, I'm gonna turn it over to you, my friend. First off, your thoughts on it. Let's go into spoilers. Whatever you want to talk about, my friend, when it concerns Spider-Man: No Way Home.
Okay, can we just let's hit the rewind button for a second. Now we're going back down to Rumor Street. Okay, and all the things that I said were rumor turned out to be true. Do you remember? No, when I said
Well, I also tell you right now, the one thing you can never do is trust a Marvel trailer because there were scenes that were shot in the trailer or that
that,
were shown in the
and
trailer
they
that
removed. Oh,
never made it to the screen. Never made it to the screen.
yeah. So a while back, I predicted, right? I was like, "Hey, the rumor has it Charlie Cox is going to be in this movie."
Mhm.
What happens? We get Charlie Cox, right? That was such. Okay, we'll talk about the movie as a whole for a minute, all right? Like,
Okay.
absolutely fantastic movie. Like, this is probably it's not my top Marvel film. That still goes to Captain America and the Winter Soldier, but this is definitely like probably my number two Marvel film right now.
Really?
And
I wish I could hold that high esteem on it.
well, because it took everything. I kept saying like it would be great if they brought, if they brought made canon into all the other Spider-Man movies, and
Yeah.
they did that and they delivered on that. But it wasn't just that. Like, this was a very Peter Parker. This was a movie more about Peter Parker than Spider-Man, right? Like, Peter Parker's
Yes.
tragic. He's this very, very tragic character. Like, his life is filled with just heartbreak and tragedy, and he's so sad because he's learning we had the first two ones, right? No, Far From Homecoming and Far From Home. Like, he's learning how to be Spider-Man. He's he wants his social circle. He wants to be Spider Man. He wants the girl. He wants it all. But now he's slowly starting to realize that he can't, in this film especially, he's realizing he can't have it all. And that's why the whole thing went wrong with Doctor Strange making the spell and Peter kept changing it. That's what caused things to boom out of control. But now we're finally getting to see the real Peter Parker. Like, we're getting to see that tragic and dark side of the Spider-Man comics, and I think they did a great job of like really having his character develop into something that's more akin to the Peter Parker we see in the comic books. And not to say they didn't leave elements of old in there, but they did a good job of developing him over the course of these three films into what he is now. And that is something that I really did enjoy because even with this movie having the other Spider-Man in it, they did a good job of taking what was good from those franchises, those lessons learned from the Peter Parkers there, and incorporating it into this film. So I think that Peter Parker might be in a dark place right now, but I think moving forward, they've set Spider-Man up, these next three movies that Feige and Pascal have been talking about, and they are really headed in a direction that is going to show us a more grown and matured Peter Parker and Spider-Man.
Once again, we're back at the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glasser along with my good friend Josh Peterson. Before the break, you heard Josh's thoughts on the latest Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man No Way Home. We are still in Spoiler Town. We're still in Spoilerville. We're still deep in the waters of Spoiler Land. Just to let you know, lake spoilers, as it were. So I want to go ahead and just talk about Spider-Man No Way Home. On my end, I was thinking that overall that this movie is a good movie. It's an okay movie, pretty good. Did not love this movie. I think the first part of the movie is the problem when it comes down to it. The way it closed out the arc of Peter Parker was good, very good. The battle of the sinister forces, the Sinister Five in this case, against Peter Parker, and Peter Parker, aka Tom Holland, Andrew Garfield, and Tobey Maguire, that was great. I love the collaboration between all three and the coordination and the teamwork that they ultimately had to go ahead and work on. I do like the fact that it just felt like a comic book. It almost like was lifted off the panels.
Oh
That
yeah.
that scene at the Statue of Liberty itself, I was just amazed by it, and I just sorry, part of the pun, but yes, it was just really that part of it was really good. The effectiveness of how they came together, I think, was a little bit clunky, but it worked well enough for what it was. But again, yes, the back half of the movie, once it gets to the Statue of Liberty, it really starts to find its niche and find
The,
its rhythm, and it closes out on a great note. With me, the only problem is the first half of the movie, especially the
okay.
first part, was really messy, really convoluted, and you have to go ahead and stretch your imagination real far that Peter Parker, aka Tom Holland, has to be the dumbest guy on earth for someone who wants to go ahead and apply to MIT to really have as many issues in regards to this whole way and about how everything did not come together. The fact that Charlie Cox can come and basically wave his wand, so to speak,
No,
and say
Doctor
everything is
Doctor
fine.
Strange, right? Or
No, I'm
who?
talking about Charlie Cox and Daredevil saying, "Oh, everything is fine as far as the all the charges that are suddenly against you,"
Oh,
without even definitively saying, "Hey, the footage was doctored" or anything like that. They could have found something more explainable for that. I really thought that was disappointing as far as the first half of the movie, the first third, let's say. As far as the movie is concerned, really disappointing how they set things up. I thought it was very messy, very convoluted. I really didn't like that aspect of it. But once it finds its rhythm and once it finds its niche, about the 60% mark, it's really a good movie.
so did you not? So you didn't like the? So was it the legal aspect of the movie, or was
Well,
it the?
the first thing. Let's put the MIT stuff aside. The
Okay.
first thing that is a problem is the way that they set up, as far as what they touched on from Far From Home and the after credit scene, and now he's number one, the number one criminal out there as far as public enemy number one because of what was thought in regards to Mysterio is concerned. They thought he killed Mysterio, etc., etc. And the way that they set that up, and they just kind of brushed it to the side with just one conversation with Daredevil, Charlie Cox,
Yeah.
because he's our lawyer. It just seemed very. It just seemed like you just threw away everything that you tried to go ahead and build upon in the last movie and just brushed it under the rug really quickly. And it seemed like it was just something that these are charges, major charges against him, and just to be saying, oh yeah, it's everything's brushed away and everything's done against everybody. All charges are dropped and things of that nature, except for Happy. I really thought that that was disappointing the way they did. They just quickly brushed it under the rug and they didn't elaborate more on it or go ahead and uncover the fact to the world that it was Mysterio's fault, or you just have to assume that everybody knows now that the footage was doctored and things of that nature in order to go ahead and understand this. It's just something that you should have devoted more time to cleaning up. And then the MIT aspect of it, as far as that's concerned, oh, just because the association with Peter Parker, there's no way that they would want to go ahead and they're going to accept them. But yet somehow he saves Paula Newsome, who does a great job on CSI Vegas. I wanted to mention, he automatically he's going to get his friends reconsidered into it. To me, it's just a stretch. You have to really stretch your imagination. Plus the fact that Doctor Strange calls him out for something you and I would have done in regards to it, as far as protest or try to understand why
Yeah.
really you were rejected from MIT. And Doctor Strange calls him out on it and just shows that, okay, you're applying to one of the best schools in North America, and you want to say you're a student, and to make those kind of just mistakes really without any type of guidance or any type of just type of input sought is just really disappointing, and just really kind of the way that they set that up was really messy. It just was kind of messy. Just they brushed a lot of stuff under the rug just so they could get to go ahead and bring bring all the past villains from the previous Spider-Man films in from the dimension and just go from there. And I understand once it gets into more of the development arc of the Green Goblin and Willem Dafoe's character, really it starts to make a turn for the better there. And obviously the death of Aunt May, I know a lot of people were really touched on. The jokes themselves out there, the humor fell flat on virtually every occasion. I didn't think anything was really funny in the movie. The Marvel humor really went astray from this film. I was disappointed in that. I think there's, especially when the scene when they're in Peter's apartment, Peter's or actually in Peter's apartment, yeah, and then you see Aunt May and the breakup between Aunt May and Happy, and then also the scene where they find Peter and MJ. It just really was very convoluted, and it just didn't fit well. It didn't mesh well. The jokes weren't funny. They weren't falling. They were falling flat. The first 40, yeah, I'd say 40 to 50% of the film, just I think really needs to be reworked. But it's the last half that gets everything right, and I think that's what everybody remembers. Just how they get there was
Yeah.
part of the problem.
So it's weird because I didn't notice that part of the problem. Like I just was kind of like along for the ride there. The hitch that I hit in the beginning of the film was this Doctor Strange is completely different from the Doctor Strange in the other movies. Like the other Doctor Strange, like he's, from films past, he's cautious and he's wise and he knows the consequences of his actions. But this Doctor Strange seems like, oh, hey, yeah, you want me to pull a cheeseburger out of another dimension? Let's go
Well,
ahead and
you know
do
what it
that.
reminds me of? It reminds me of the original Doctor Strange in the Doctor Strange movie when he was first learning his powers and he was so brash.
Yeah, well, it's like they devolved his character, like they sent him backwards, and I guess like he had to do that because that was kind of a springboard for not only this movie to happen, but the multiverse of madness, right? Because
Yeah.
if you watch the trailer that happened after the credits rolled, y-
AKA after credit scene, but it
af-
was really looked like a
a
trailer.
trailer, yeah, and you can hear that Wong is clearly upset with Strange, right? Like,
The Sorcerer Supreme, Wong, go
yeah,
Wong.
and him saying like, "Hey, there's going to be consequences for your actions and stuff like that." So, I don't know. It just doesn't the Doctor Strange part. That's where I hit a hitch. But then again, like,
Benedict Wong is just so cool. I just want to put that out there. Benedict Wong is just so awesome.
yeah, no, he's amazing. I always thought that he was great in what was that Genghis Khan show that was on Netflix or Marco Polo? I think it was. It was.
Deadly Class, it was really good in too for that one
Yeah,
season on Sci-Fi.
yeah. But anyways, I mean that's where the hitch got me. But I mean, I didn't really notice a lot of the stuff that you did. I was just kind of along for the ride because I was so excited for the things that like I had a feeling were going to happen. So I was just like,
But
when
you
are you
are a
going to
bigger
show me?
but
Yeah,
you're a bigger Spider-Man fan than I am.
yeah.
Spider-Man
That's
has meant more to you over the course of your life than a lifetime than me, and this is a culmination of bringing everything together. And to me, I saw that at the very end, and I was very happy and glad I did. It's just, again, the things that brought it together in order to go ahead and finish out this story, it just was kind of messy, and I really didn't enjoy that aspect of it until that point. Once it started to roll, it really rolled, but it
yeah.
really up until that point, it was kind of a messy roller coaster ride for me.
So let me ask you this though, and like I want to talk about a couple more scenes in the movie before we move on. But what did you think about the turn of the villains? Right, like that was another part that kind of threw me off a little bit. You have like, oh hey, we don't want to die when we go back to our own dimension, so we're gonna come up with a cure for these guys so that they somehow miraculously don't die. But
I know.
then,
Let me ask you this: if Doctor Octopus, even if he becomes good, doesn't he go back to his universe still underwater?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he remembered pulling the machine into the river. Like he said that in the movie. But what was weird to me is like they're all sitting there in the apartment and they're like, "Yeah, we totally want to be cured so that we don't die." And then all of a sudden they're like, "You tried to cure us. Let me smash your face in." Like there's this big battle. Like the little like thing that happened, the light switch or whatever you want to call it, like the snap, the non Thanos snap, that shifted their motivations in another direction it was really just bizarre how it happened, like it didn't.
It wasn't just Willem Dafoe's character that did that really hard snap, and you can understand that with his, character with the two different personalities. But with everybody else, they don't have that same excuse.
Right, so it was jolting, I guess. It just felt weird how it happened. um and then I get, we learn from that scene though, the death of Aunt May, we learn that there was never an Uncle Ben in the MCU. It was always just Aunt May. Like that was something that totally threw me off. We also learned that MJ is not Mary Jane; she's Michelle Johnson, I think,
Jones,
Michelle
Jones.
Jones Watson. So that was kind of, there. The MCU is not is not as adjacent to the comic books as we're learning. Like this feels more like the Ultimates universe, than anything else. So that being said, like a couple of my favorite scenes here was like I did. I did, not noticing the stuff that you did from the scene with Charlie Cox. Like I thought that was really cool when he showed up, and then he catches the brick, and Peter Parker goes, "What kind of lawyer are you?" And he goes, "A really good one," and he's kind of alluding to his power.
And don't get me wrong, I love having Charlie Cox in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I mean, as we saw from Episode 5 in Hawkeye, you knew that was inevitable because just a few short days before, we saw another Daredevil character in the midst of that was introduced officially into the MCU. So it's great having him here, and I'm glad to have him part of it. I just thought, again, having him being the super lawyer that just instantly within the span of 2 minutes tell you that he's taken care of everything in regards to the legal team. It's just that's not reality. That's not the way things can be done so easily and brushed aside unless you prove definitively without a doubt that the footage was doctored, and there was no announcement of that. There was no claim of that. That's the part that disappointments is just dotting your I's and crossing your T's. And I blame that on the writers and the director for that more than I do the actors. So that
Yeah.
was just the issue. But having Daredevil in is great because it just sets up everything for his future as well.
Yeah, yeah, and that's we can talk about that a whole other day because we're taking up a lot of time with this. But we're the one thing I did really love about this was the interactions between the three Spider-Men, right? Like you had Andrew Garfield was clearly like the most excited to have. He comes from like the darkest universe, but he was the most excited to have them all together. Like he had this childlike glee. Tobey Maguire was like the wise, experienced Spider-Man. Then you had Tom Holland, who's just in this really dark place, right? Because he had just lost his aunt, so he's, the interactions between them were really cool and they were fun to watch. Like I love the apartment scene where with Ned's grandma, like that was really entertaining. What was, I guess, like my final thoughts here was what was kind of rather convoluted was the fact that like they have these villains that come from the worlds of these Spider-Men, but these Spider-Men are older than what they were in their movies, right? Like Tobey Maguire
Yeah.
is older and wiser. Andrew Garfield's character is clearly grown, right? Because he refers to the death of Gwen Stacy. But this all happens after these villains come from their worlds, but these villains are already dead and they remember killing them. So is it from their world but from different timelines? Like the timelines going across this movie are a little bit confusing. And then also now that Electro's going back without his powers, and does this mean that Gwen Stacy never died in Andrew Garfield's world? Like there's so many things that like need to be explained upon, and I don't think they're ever going to go back and do that.
I don't think they will either. But again, this does set up the future for Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I think he will, even though he's again hinted in several interviews that this might be the last we see of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. I disagree. I know that there was rumors that a contract has been signed for another 3 movies for him.
Yeah.
So I think that right now Sony is just going to write a blank check and say, Tom Holland, you put the numbers in there because we want you back. And I think right now, especially if Uncharted, as much as we love the Uncharted series, if that movie bombs, that means that he's going to be another one of those Marvel actors who cannot make a thing that's successful outside of the MCU.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, he's going to probably come back, crawling back, wanting to pick up that paycheck when it concerns, what's going on there. So we'll see what happens. But it is Spider-Man No Way Home. We've shared our spoilerish thoughts on it. If you have any thoughts on Spider-Man No Way Home and the gigantic success that it is, please let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. We know you're out there and you've already most likely seen the movie. We would love to hear your thoughts. Do you agree with Josh that it's a tremendous top of the line MCU film, or with me that thought it was a pretty good film, closed out the movie well, but got off to a rocky start? Let me know. Let Josh know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. My friend, before we hit the break, just one last thing. Yellowstone, which has done a tremendous job on the Paramount Network and Paramount Plus, Basically, it is the thing that's holding the Paramount Network together as something that is garnering, can you believe this, on for cable television, a whopping 7 to 7.5 million viewers every episode for its current fourth season run, and it's going to turn the reins over for a prequel series called 1883, which you know is going to just ride those numbers in there and probably have some good numbers itself. I mean, this series in and of itself has been a sensation over the past the 4 seasons that it's been on. Your thoughts, real quickly, on Yellowstone and its prequel, 1883, that's coming out this weekend to the Paramount Network.
I have not seen it. I've had people recommend it to me, and I've seen, clearly there's a culture for it because you see a lot of like memes with people saying, "Let's take them to the train station," where they, go to off people in the show. Um, yeah, I mean, it definitely is something that seems to be sustainable. Kind of, I guess, in the way was that Ozark on Netflix. That's kind of what it
Yeah.
reminds me of a little bit. But yeah, I
Way more
mean,
popular, though. Way more popular.
right. So if this show is able to like maintain the audience it has and have a prequel, and if the prequel manages to be successful, not in the vein of like Fear the Walking Dead, which was not very successful, it could be, yeah, I mean, this could be something that sustains Paramount Plus at least until something new comes in, with like the Halo show on the horizon. Who's to say how well that will do? But um yeah, I
You
mean,
say Fear the Walking Dead. Obviously, has done nowhere near what this predecessor
right.
or
That's
its success,
that's yeah, that's what I'm
but it's still in its what, seventh season now. It's still continued to have a life with AMC. So I mean, if it can get
these
7 seasons,
shows, yeah, these shows are
yeah,
The Walking Dead, man. They're,
yeah,
they're
yeah.
just
Well, that's true. That is AMC. But if it can get that anywhere near the kind of numbers that Yellowstone does, I mean, it's beginning good reviews from critics. So we'll wait and see, my friend. But yeah, Yellowstone in 1883. We know Yellowstone's been a big hit, but 1883, the prequel, is coming to Paramount Network. In fact, you've probably already seen it if you're a big Yellowstone fan. So please let us know your thoughts on 1883 and why Yellowstone has connected with you so much right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos at popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, coming out after the break, we're going to be talking some Xbox because they produced and they released out there Power On, the story of Xbox, a documentary that's on the history of the Xbox over its past 20 years. Plus, we're also going to be talking about Lord of the Rings. Speaking of 20 years, man, 2001 was such a good year. A lot of good stuff that came out there. Plus, also, Josh Peterson will have his best and worst of pop culture in 2021. And we'll end the show with previewing the week for what's up ahead in pop culture right here at the Pop Culture Cosmos. And we're back with the Pop Culture Cosmos. It's Gerald Glassford along with my good friend. He is our jolly elf, Mr. Josh Peterson. Want to go ahead and mention one more time that we are the leader, #1 Facebook tabletop RPG streamer that's out there. So if you want to check out all of our awesome games today, in fact, we did 2 before we even started this taping of tremendous tabletop RPG games. DM Mitch had one, and also Vampires and Vitae with Rob and Melinda, who does such a great job each and every time out. They both had their games streamed on Facebook. So you want to go ahead and check out today Pop Culture Cosmos on Facebook. And also go ahead and check out Melinda and I coming up on the Friday show as well. Ooh, Christmas. Christmas around the corner, my friend. But I'll tell you what, we still got a lot more to talk about on this episode. You are a major Xbox fanboy. I am a pretty good Xbox fanboy. I have enjoyed Xbox over the years. In fact, we recently talked about Xbox hitting the big old 2.0 a few weeks back. Your thoughts, though, as they recently released a 6-part documentary, which I caught, Power On, the story of Xbox. And it was pretty much produced out there on all major Xbox channels. If you want to go ahead, the best place on the and the way I caught it was the Xbox channel on YouTube. So I think right there is probably the best way for anybody to catch it out there. But they've got several other outlets and other ways you can catch it. But Power On, the story of Xbox is a 6-part documentary from development stage to the inner fights in regards to even being born, to the drama and behind the scenes stuff, to the highs and lows of the past 20 years for the Xbox. I am going to tell you right now, my friend, I am very thankful that this got put out there. I think this was not an Xbox PR stunt. I think that they included most, not all, of the low points of the Xbox, but they included almost everything, especially all the major things that were out there. They were very frank to tell you what mistakes that they made, including the closure of Lionhead Studios, the Red Ring of Death, and how they handled that initially. They talked about exactly how devastating that was and how much of a price tag it cost. They talked about where they placed in the industry at several points in time during each generation. They did pat themselves on the back at times, but some of it was deserved as far as what they've accomplished over the years. But your thoughts on maybe sitting down with this over the holiday break or the time that you're going to spend off? Because I know you're going to be off for a little while, and we'll talk about it at the back end of the show. But I wanted to ask you real quick your thoughts on Power On, the story of Xbox.
Yeah, actually, when you sent me the message talking about what we're going to talk about, I didn't even know that that was a thing. Like, it wasn't advertised on IGN or
They
Polygon or
kind
any
of
of those.
they mentioned it on their 20th anniversary live stream, and then they
Yeah,
just soft released it.
it
It was
just
just
kind of
kind of
snuck
amazing.
out. Yeah, so I haven't had a
Yeah.
chance to watch it. I'm as soon as I get through The Witcher season 2, I'll probably check. That'll be next on my to watch list. But yeah, I mean, I'd be really curious to know the story because I do know that there was a lot of things going on behind the scenes where Microsoft did not want to put any funding into gaming. Like Bill Gates himself did not like the idea, even though he introduced the first Xbox, he did not really care much for the for gaming. So I know there was a lot of pushback for
For
hardware.
hardware, it was
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I know there's a lot of pushback internally for like whether or not even the Xbox 360 was going to come out. So yeah, I mean, it's definitely something I would love to sit down and watch because I mean, Microsoft's done a great job with their things. I can't imagine what the landscape would be like at this moment without the Xbox and some of the major franchises that they've put out, and even some of the smaller indie games that they've put out. So yes, I will definitely be sitting down to check this thing out over the holidays here. But it sounds like you enjoyed your time with it. So what how would you sell this to somebody who like doesn't play Xbox? Maybe someone who sits in the Nintendo or Sony family.
You'd have to sit through it as far as the aspect of Microsoft, the inner workings of Microsoft, and how over the years they've been able to handle their business, and in some cases not handle their business. Plus, going into a marketplace that they were considerably behind Nintendo and Sony on. So that to me is it's the most intriguing aspect. And if you're someone that's an outsider or bystander and not really familiar or really caring about the Xbox product, it's going to be a hard sell for you because it is again 6 40-minute episodes around roughish, maybe around 40 minutes each, 6 hour, 6 episodes, 40 minutes each of nothing but Xbox and Xbox talk and behind the scenes at Microsoft and whole 9 yards. So if you're not a fan of Microsoft and Xbox, or even wanting to go ahead and become interested in the behind the scenes of this, then it's probably not for you. But if you are interested in behind the scenes of one of the major software developers in history, and also one of the leading hardware makers in history, and how that was they basically, in the case of Steve Ballmer and Bill Gates, both very reluctant, kicking and screaming into this age. I mean, first off, they had to sell Bill Gates on it. Then they had to sell Steve Ballmer. And each of them were huge battles, as you'll find out. It's really something I think that is very interesting. Plus, again, all the hitches in the road, all the successes, but also a lot of the mistakes that they've made over the past 20 years is documented and actually shown and actually not shied away from. And that's probably the aspect I like the most of it. But yeah, a really solid documentary. I really enjoyed it. It may end up on one of my best of lists. We'll see what happens there. But it is Power On, the story of Xbox. The best way to get it is just go to the Xbox channel on YouTube and you can pop it right in there. And again, it's 6 40-minute episodes. Maybe take it all in once, maybe take it one at a time, but it is something I think you'll be enjoying as you go through for the entire story of Xbox. So Power On, the story of Xbox. It's there for you. Go ahead. I believe you should. If you're a fan of video games, you're a fan of the business side of things, whether it's a major company or not, just you're a fan of behind the scenes things and things of that nature, go ahead and check out Power On, the story of Xbox today.
Yes. Oh, sorry. Yes, I will. I do plan on checking. I do love me some gaming documentaries, so that is something I am eager to sit down and watch.
Well, before we head on out, my friend, there's still more to talk about. I wanted to give you plenty of time. I'm going to go ahead and dust off, dust aside anything else right now, because before we talk about Lord of the Rings and before we talk about what's coming up this week, I want you to go ahead and talk about your best and worst of pop culture for 2021. I know there's our rules for what we're talking about is that there are no rules, no top 10 lists, no top 5 lists, no set number that we're going to deal with. When I speak to you, when I speak to Melinda, and when I have my own list next week, we're just going to go ahead and just say, you know what? These are the things in pop culture, whether it's a book, whether it's a video, whether it's TV, whether it's video on demand, whether it's a film, whether it's a video game, whatever just really stand out to you in pop culture, one way or the other. I want to hear it, man. So please, we're going to start off with your best of pop culture for 2021 and then save the very best for the last of this list, if you
Okay.
can.
Okay. So I've kind of like broken my things up into groups of three. I have my three that I enjoyed, and then my top one and my worst one in each category. So I have movies, TV, video games, and music. All right. So we'll just start on movies. All right. Here's my top three that I've seen this year. I got Ghostbusters Afterlife. Did you ever get a chance to watch that?
Not as of yet.
Okay, but I'd be curious to like have a chat with you about it, after you check it out. But it was an unexpected joy for me. I was not expecting a lot out of it, especially after the last outing. Yeah, it was definitely it was nice to see these older characters come back in a newer form with this updated technology, and just seeing how they maintained the I guess the lighthearted feeling of the original Ghostbusters, but still like make it good for a modern audience. Like if you're bringing a new generation of Ghostbusters into the fold, just like you're bringing a new generation of fans into the fold. And I feel like that transition was pulled off very well. Um, Next one here, I got Mobile Suit Gundam Hathaway. So this premiered on Netflix, and this is the latest in the Gundam UC timeline, and this is something that actually has the son of a character from the 1980s Gundam series. So it's cool to see um, how he I guess came from these older characters, and just to see like how this newer generation looks at the wars of their fathers. So that was a pretty good one. The animation is crisp and it's beautiful. The voice acting is really well done. Like there wasn't a single thing about this that felt like it had an anime trope. Like it was a very solid piece of film. Third one is one that we both enjoyed. Shang Chi, right? Shang Chi.
Yep, that we did.
Very well written. The soundtrack, the way it was stylized, the martial arts choreography, like everything about this movie was really great. I'm not. We've already kind of talked about this at nauseum, so I'm not gonna go into more detail about it. But it was a very great film. Especially since with like Black Widow opening this next phase of the MCU. While it was a good film, it was not it was not a standard bearer by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so for my top film, is that what you want me to do, to say my top film and then my
Oh
worst
no,
film?
top whatever your top things are in pop culture. You
Okay.
whatever you want, my friend.
All
It's
right.
all
So
yours.
I think the top thing I've watched this year is something we've already talked about on the show. Is Spider-Man: No Way Home would be my top thing from 2021. My worst thing though would be Home Sweet Home Alone. This is a just a plague to. I'm sorry, that was poor phrasing. Should not use that word right now. This was just a. It was just a very poor addition to the Home Alone family. I was expecting. I'm so sorry. My dog decided to lay a fart right next to me. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I'm sorry. Just like it's bad. All right. But anyway, sorry. This was a very poor addition to the Home Alone family. You know, I had never watched Home Alone 4. Didn't know there was a Home Alone 4. But Home Alone 3 was not great.
There's
But
actually five of them if you actually look it up.
really, okay. So
Yeah.
I didn't know that. But this was just I was expecting a lot. No, I wasn't expecting a lot from this movie. But like with the cast, you know, they had a very good cast, but it's just a really bad story. You know, you felt so bad laughing at these people who had fallen on hard times, and they're just trying to get a doll back that this kid had stolen, and all this bad stuff keeps happening to them. Like, yeah, it didn't. I don't know. I don't know. You just go out there and watch it yourself. Create your own opinions on it. But it just was not my favorite thing. Moving on to television slash streaming. Honorable mention: Witcher 2. I'm about 4 episodes in, and it is pretty good so far. Um, Here I have WandaVision. So that was an unexpected joy to watch. I guess me and my wife sat down and watched it, and I loved the callbacks to all the old television shows, and then had that like Pleasantville feel to it. And then she gets her powers, and you have this big fight scene. So it did a good job as being the introductory Marvel streaming series. They did a very great job of showing like, hey, we care about television streaming content as much as we care about the films. Next, I got Men in Kilts, which I've talked about on a show already. Features the two main characters from Outlander doing a road trip across Scotland, like highlighting all the beautiful things about it: food, music, culture. That was just a very easy show to sit down and watch, and you felt very. It felt. I don't know. It makes you feel like you're there, I guess. And, I've been kind of getting more into these like docuseries lately. Next one, I have Cowboy Bebop. Not my favorite show that I've seen this year, but it definitely is. It was good. It was good. We talked about this last week. Like, do you have any? Now that's kind of sat in for a week. Do you have any more thoughts to add on to it, or are you?
There's a petition out that is asking for it to be caught on somewhere else. I'm hoping it gets caught on some. I hope it gets caught on somewhere else. That's my opinion, and it might actually appear also as well on my best of next week. We'll see.
Okay, because
Still thinking about it.
yeah, and I'm wondering too if it's going to be something that Netflix kind of looks at and says like, oh well, maybe I guess more people liked it than we thought. Maybe they go back on their word a little bit. My top show of this year would be Clarkson's Farm. I decided this was a Amazon Prime special featuring Jeremy Clarkson. This was a I don't know, as someone who owns land and like literally has nothing on. I got about 5 acres and I got nothing on there. It's just overgrown with weeds and stuff. I sat back and I'm like, you know what? I could see myself farming. I probably won't ever farm, but like I could sat back and I'm like, it would be fun to like have a tractor and go around and do all this stuff.
Josh the farmer.
Right, right. Okay, so my worst show of this year would probably be Mighty Ducks Game Changers. Like I did enjoy the show, but it was just not something that thrilled me enough to keep going back to it.
And the question is now with Emilio Estevez leaving the show for good. Even though there's going to be a season 2 of it, it's really going to be very iffy if that show continues.
I'm predicting it's going to end after season 2 because it doesn't have the heart and soul of the original movies. And now that, Emilio's gone, I don't see it being, unless they somehow manage to bring back Charlie, but I honestly don't see it being anything that has a long lifespan.
Anything else in the? Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Television. That's it for TV and streaming. Video games. So I got 2 more categories here. Video games. Top 3 games here. I got Tales of Arise on which I played on PS5. Really, it's hard. There's a big story to this one. Not really easy to explain, but it was nice to just sit down and play. I haven't played a JRPG in a long time, and this one was a nice one to kind of just sit on the couch. It was the first time in a long time that I had thought about a game while working, and thought to myself, like, I can't wait to get home to play this. And I'm sure this is kind of something you experienced with, like, Uncharted and Mass Effect. And I know those are 2 of your favorite games.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Forza Horizon 5, very great game. Is it worthy of the 10 it got? Debatable, but, it's definitely, like, I did really enjoy my time with it. Cozy Grove is another one. This is one we actually got a review code for, so I got to sit down and play that. Very calming, relaxing game. I'm finding more and more that I like these games where you're building and managing like nature parks. There's something about it, you know. It's very soothing, I guess. Top game of the year, I'd say Halo Infinite. I'm about like 6 hours in right now, and uh, while the map itself does feel overwhelming at times, it is a very fun reinvention of something that like I grew up with pretty much. You know, I mean, it came out when I was in middle school, but you know, from middle school on to where I am today, it's has everything that you know and love about the series, but it also injects things that are new that feel good to play. Worst game of the year, Biomutant. I know I said I want to go back and play that one again, but that was definitely not what I was expecting it to be. And I don't really know what I was expecting it to be in the first place, but that is something that was a little underwhelming here. Music, I don't, I'm not really gonna like review these albums, but I did listen to them, and they are two of my favorites. I keep going back to over and over. The Young Hearts have an album out called Modern State you can catch today, and they're more like a emo band without the screamo, I guess. Like they're just like a solid emo slash punk band, I guess. Limp Bizkit's new album still sucks. Like, I don't, have you had a chance to listen to that at all?
I have, yes, and I gonna have to say I agree with you on that.
It's like Limp Bizkit's like, yeah, I don't know, like he hadn't done anything great since like Significant Other, and I guess some of the stuff from Chocolate Starfish was kind of cool, but everything else in between that has just been horrible. But I just kept hearing people say, "Hey man, you need to listen to Still Sucks." And at first I downloaded it to listen to it ironically, and then I'm like, I can't bash on this because it actually like Fred Durst actually like has he still got it, but he's got some things to say on here that I can kind of get behind, you know, like yeah, that opening track where he talks about how we all need to come together, you know, and fight against the people who are turning us all against each other. I'm like, yeah, I can feel the message you're laying down there, Fred D. But that's my list, man. That is my list in all of its glory and entirety. I'll probably write a little bit about these things, you know, as we get closer to the new year. But that's what I got for you.
And you can check it out if he does right there at popculturecosmos.com. Plus also as well, if you have any thoughts on the best and worst that you checked out in pop culture, we'd love to hear it. And we'll actually even say on the show if you want, right here at popculturecosmos at yahoo.com. Well, Josh, I cannot thank you enough for sharing your thoughts on today's program with your best and worst of pop culture 2021. But before we head on out, I want to go ahead and make note that this is the 20th anniversary, not only of Xbox this year, as we talked about earlier with the Power On story of Xbox documentary, but it's The Lord of the Rings, my friend. A little movie. Okay, it's a big movie then. It's a big movie now. Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring came out this time 20 years ago, and it really shaped up as far as the beginning of what I am going to say right now. And I think that there's really no argument, sorry to Star Wars fans, that The Lord of the Rings is the best trilogy. I'm not talking about movie set because then you get into the Hobbits and that's a different story. I want to talk about The Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, with its 20th anniversary. It is the best movie trilogy of all time. The Two Towers, which some people say is the best of the three movies. And then you have The Return of the King that won all the Oscars the year that it came out. My friend, this has been a monumental achievement for Peter Jackson. I think that is something that will go down in history as one of the great landmarks of movie making, period. The Star Wars trilogy is awesome. There's no way to deny its history and how wonderful it is. But I think that if you compared the three, as far compared the three movies to the three movies back to back and face up, I think The Lord of the Rings is going to squeak it on out. As much as I love Star Wars, as much as I love Empire Strikes Back, and as much as I think Return of the Jedi is a really good movie, even though a lot of people think that it's okay at best, I think that as a trilogy, it's really good and it's really better than anything that Star Wars has done. But The Lord of the Rings, I think from the get go, is a quality trilogy matched by none other.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you. There's very few movies where people have taken time off. Okay, 2020 is a perfect example of this, right? Like we had a lot of time sitting on our couches, not doing anything. People played video games, but not many people that I talk to who are pop culture junkies like ourselves, not many of them sat down and said, "Hey, you know what I've done these several months I've spent in my living room? I have watched the Star Wars trilogy." In fact, I will say not a single one of them had said that. You know what I did hear a lot of during the pandemic, I sat down and I watched Lord of the Rings all the way through, right? Because when I feel like Lord of the Rings provides you, it takes you to a world that is like you just want to explore every corner of it.
And the extended cuts. I recommend to anybody get the
Yes.
extended
Yeah,
cuts.
absolutely. And you can buy, I know they just released a big like set of 4K,
Yes.
and you can buy the 4K Blu-ray sets always on sale at Best Buy for, I think I want to say like $60, but um
No, this one's a complete collection, which includes all 6 films, theatrical and extended, the
yeah.
whole 9 yards, digital downloads. They're 4K, HDR, best you can get. I think it's around the $200 mark. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's right around there. So
Let's be honest though, like if you're gonna pay high dollar for a set of films, like this is definitely worth paying
yeah,
for because you're getting like about 20 hours worth of movies there, and like despite The Hobbit, like I didn't dislike the Hobbit movies. They dragged on a little bit, but I would still say that like if I were gonna sit down and go through all the Middle Earth movies, I don't I'm not gonna end up fast forwarding through any of this stuff. That being said, like I said, I think Lord of the Rings does a better job of like pulling you into this world and keeping you locked in. Whereas like Star Wars, because it jumps around to so many different worlds, it doesn't have the same like tractor beam, pardon the pun, tractor beam quality that Lord of the Rings has. It's just there's something just so beautiful about this film set. The soundtrack, the acting, the world. It's so fantastic, and I don't. It pains me to say it to know that like future generations coming up will not appreciate it the way that it was appreciated by us.
I'm still trying to get my daughters to go ahead and check it out. I, I know that we're kind of laid off of them as far as maybe not say trying to invert, but I'm hoping one day that they will. In fact, because my wife and I named our girls after the Lord of the Rings movies, so
That's
hopefully
right.
they will go
Mm,
ahead and yeah, I'm just hoping that they will go ahead and check it out. I know that maybe that's part of the reason why they don't want to check it out,
yeah.
but
My
I'm hoping they will.
Yeah, yeah, and that's something that needs to happen. This is how the legacy of Lord of the Rings will carry on. Is like mothers and fathers sitting down showing their kids, and then hopefully them showing their kids, and so on and so forth. I've actually like my kids are, my girls are 5 and 6, and like no 6 and 7. I'm sorry, they're 6 and 7, and we've watched all 6 Middle Earth films. We're about halfway through Lord
Wow.
of the Rings, or not Lord of the Rings. We're about halfway through Return of the King right now, so we need to finish it. But they've really enjoyed those. Like our oldest actually took up archery after watching Legolas do his thing. So it's I think that I think that a modern audience does still have the ability to be like enthralled by this film. They just need a reason to watch it.
Once again, it's Lord of the Rings. It is hit its 20th anniversary. I know Josh and I truly have a love affair with the first trilogy of the Lord of the Rings. I want to hear your thoughts out there. If you think the Lord of the Rings trilogy, meaning the Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, which is hitting 20 years old this week, plus also as well the Twin Towers and the Return of the King. If that trilogy not only holds up against vaunted trilogies such as the Star Wars trilogy, I'll throw that one out there, but if you think it's the best trilogy of all time, like we do, we'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And if the Lord of the Rings, what kind of memories does it have for you, whether it's reading the book, watching the movies, or enjoying the experience whatsoever on it? Please let us know your thoughts on Lord of the Rings as the movie hits its 20th anniversary. Popculturecosmos@yahoo.com. Well, my friend, it's been a great episode. I cannot thank you enough. I also want to mention before we head on out that this will be the last episode you will appear on for a little while because you are taking a break for the best of reasons. So I want to wish you and your family the happiest and safest of holidays and a beautiful one that's on the way, being nothing but happy and healthy for you. Coming from the heart, Ben. Coming
Yeah.
from the heart.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll miss it. Once baby's here and we're settled in a little bit, I'll be back. But yeah, I just want to, the baby. We're excited about baby. Like it's. I don't know. Like there's just something, and I know I'm gonna feel a lot of things once the baby's born. But it's just like this act of like bringing life into the world. It feels so surreal to me.
If you do though, name your kid Geraldine. You're gonna have all my family looking at me like, "What did you do to make Josh name their kid Geraldine?"
Yeah, no, my wife's named after the Esprit, the Lotus Esprit, like her dad named her after a car. So now we're carrying on the tradition and we're naming our baby Avora after the Lotus Avora. And we're gonna
Okay.
call her Evie for short. But if it was a boy, I got to pick the name. We're gonna name him Gretzky. But unfortunately, after the great one. But unfortunately,
Well,
didn't.
at least it's not it's not your car currently. You're the Challenger. You didn't
Yeah,
name her after that. Hello, Challenger. How are you? That would,
yeah, yeah. Right.
but
That would be
that'd
something.
be that would be something neat. But I do want to wish you and your family and spirit and everybody in your family all the best this holiday season and in your time off. You know you're ready to come back whenever you are. Whenever you're ready to come back, the seat will always be warm for you. You and I have been doing this for 5 years, and it's been the best 5 years of podcasting I've ever done with you, my friend. So I truly cannot thank you enough for being part of this, and looking forward to have you back in the hot seat. But before we end out, my friend, as we close out today's show, want to go ahead and make mention of what's coming up this week on Christmas week because it's the last week we're going to see any inclusions to films that are trying to go ahead and make their way to the Oscar buzz because you got to put it out there by Christmas Day. So you're going to see a lot of stuff. But we're also seeing major blockbusters for the final time this season in Sing 2, The Matrix Resurrections, and The Kingsman, among others. Plus, we're going to see the final episode of Hawkeye, which has been a great series so far. Could it be the best Marvel series? We'll find out. We'll see my thoughts on the Friday show with Melinda Barkhouse Ross coming up on the PC Multiverse on, I believe, at or near Christmas Day. I think you'll be able to hear it, so check out for that. But any last thoughts on this big week coming up? I really feel sorry for the Kingsman. The Kingsman has been tossed around on the release date schedule for a long time, back and forth, back and forth. I know you and I have spoken about it being moved back like at least 3 times, 4 times, and then it was pushed up from a February or March date to right where it is now. I think they just blew it with the Kingsman. I think right now in the age of Spider-Man and Sing 2 and the Matrix getting all the pub, I really think that they just blew it with the Kingsman.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't have any doubt that it's going to be one of those like much in the vein of like the original Kingsman. Like it's going to be something that people discover after it's out of theaters. Like it's going to be something that people enjoy watching once it's available to stream and download digitally and all that. Yes, it's unfortunate that where it's placed, but I feel like the movie itself is going to be good. It's the
Yeah.
Matrix, I think, that's not going to do so hot in box office numbers because of the HBO Max release date.
I agree with you, my friend. In fact, I'm going to see it HBO Max. I've got the big screen already ready to go ahead and pop it there. I'm excited for it. I want to see it. If it's really super good to me, I may go ahead and check it out in theaters like I did Dune. I
Yeah.
made every effort to go ahead and check out Dune after I watched it on TV to go ahead and check it out on IMAX. I may do the same with Matrix Resurrections, but we'll see. I will have a review of the Matrix Resurrections on our Friday show plus thoughts on Hawkeye episode 6. We'll go ahead and just basically recap the series from there. Plus, Melinda Barkhouse Ross will have her best and worst in pop culture for 2021 as well. So for Josh Peterson, this is Gerald Glassford. It's another beautiful day in paradise right here in the pop culture cosmos. We thank you for listening. And here's hoping you have yourself a great